If the Trump administration thought that journalist Don Lemon and Georgia Fort would back down after their arrest today, well, they were sorely mistaken.
I should be protected under the First Amendment, just like all of the journalists who I've been advocating for, too. I've been advocating for mainstream media journalists who have been brutalized for months. Do we have a constitution? That is the pressing question that should be on the front of everyone's mind. Amplifying the truth, documenting what is happening in our community is not a crime.
The way to stand up to a bully, to a tyrant, is not to bend the knee. It's not to acquiesce. It is to metaphorically punch them right in the nose.
Metaphorically, to be clear. Joining me now is independent journalist and former senior national correspondent at ABC News, Terry Moran, as well as chief Washington correspondent for the MS Now and co-host of The Weekend, Eugene Daniels. I knew you have to wake up at like 4 in the morning, so thank you for being here. Terry, let me start with you. There's a lot to unpack here, but what was your initial reaction when you woke up this morning and saw news that these journalists had been arrested overnight, put in jail?
I wasn't shocked. You could feel it coming in some ways because they had tried already, right? And 2 federal judges, a magistrate judge and then the chief judge of that district, both said there's no case against journalists here. They weren't committing any crimes. So they took it to a grand jury apparently and got the indictment. So I wasn't shocked, but I was dismayed. I was depressed. And when I read the indictment, I was even more depressed because they are trying to say that being a journalist, that basically embedding with a team that's going to go do something, meaning you're participating in that. Asking questions of somebody in a doorway is obstructing them and harming their First Amendment rights. They're trying to criminalize ordinary reporting.
I want to get into some of the things in that indictment. I keep saying it's 14 pages. It's publicly available. Anyone out there can read it. You both have been, I mean, you've covered war zones, you've covered campaigns, you've probably asked thousands of people questions. Let me ask you, Eugene, I want to read from the indictment. Overt Act 23, as it's called. Lemon and Fort approached the pastor and largely surrounded him and physically obstructed his freedom of movement while Lemon peppered him with questions to promote the operation's message. And I think we may have video of this we can show, too. What is your... Talk to everybody. You can see it right there on the screen. Just about what a journalist does in moments like this.
Exactly that, right? He is asking him questions. He's giving him answers. There's some pushback. If people listen to the audio online, they're having a conversation about what's happening, and that is what's key here. And Terry's right. The idea that they are setting a precedent that when we are out there doing our jobs, talking to people, standing near them, now that's obstructing. Now that's doing something else. I will also say it is not lost on me that the language they're using in there, talking about 2 black journalists, is very specific, right? Intimidating them. That is something that black people have heard our whole lives, or we're very intimidating, and I think that should not be lost on folks.
It's 2 black journalists who were put in jail overnight, and Donald Trump has gone after and targeted a number of prominent black voices, Tish James, Lisa Cook. I mean, what do you call out what you see there?
Yeah. It's racism, right?
Yeah.
I think it's very simple, but it also is supposed to be a lesson to people, right?
Yes.
Because if people like Don Lemon, if people like Tish James, the Attorney General of New York, can get in trouble with this administration, what does that mean for the other black and brown people in this country? And that's the real question that when I talk to advocates, when I talk to activists, now when I talk to journalists as well, that's what they're worried about, is that simply being black and brown in the country is dangerous.
And being fellow journalists, right? They're going to come after the most vulnerable, they think, in the public mind or some people's minds. And then the real reason is to send a chill right through everybody who does this work, whether independently like me, whether with a network like you. They want you to think twice before you engage in journalism.
The independent journalist aspect of this, I think, is an important one to call out, too, because they've certainly gone after large media organizations, but these journalists don't have the same apparatus, per se. I want to just show, so I want to get to that, but I want to just talk about one other piece because we have another video to show people. This is another overt Act 28, shall we call it. Lemon posted himself at the main door of the church where he confronted some congregants and physically obstructed them. This is, I think, what you were referencing, as they tried to exit the church building to challenge them with facts about U.S. immigration policy. And I, again, want to just show on the video there, because Don Lemon live streamed this whole thing. That's what they're talking about. You can actually see an opening to the door there. But Terry, again, you have been in so many environments of asking questions of people and getting information. Help people understand watching what's happening here in this visual.
He's being persistent, okay? You have to be persistent if you want to get answers. And in this situation, I should say, I didn't love the idea of going into a sanctuary for the protesters, but this is what he wanted to cover that day, and he's got a constitutional right to do it. And in doing that, he tried to get answers. And right there, the gentleman is answering him back. That's called American freedom, what you're looking at right there. That's not criminal activity.
You kind of referenced this a little bit, Eugene. There are a lot of journalists who are, you're very young, but here you are, but who are earlier in their careers than both of you are, who may be looking at this, and I think this is part of the point, and thinking, well, that seems scary, or maybe I can't go to places and talk to protesters, or maybe I shouldn't go to places that are under the watchful eye of Trump. It is scary. What do you say to them?
It is chilling, right? And it's supposed to be chilling. But what they should take stock in is that at the end of the day, both Georgia and Don talked today about the things that they saw and did. They don't seem deterred. And what that tells you is that people in this country are not scared to stand up for the Constitution, right? We are not activists as journalists, but our job is to make sure that the American experiment continues to work. I will also say, when I was White House Correspondents Association president, one of the things that I was shocked by at the very beginning of this was the acquiescing.
That's it.
And that has continued. And so now, what are institutions going to do as we move forward? What decisions are going to be made at larger news organizations and independent journalists as
You
well?
two are a great pair. I hope you'll come back and talk to me about this. I wish this was the end, and I fear it is just the beginning. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you.